Well, Heidi-ho, Screamerinos.
Woo!
This is Caryn.
And this is Jill.
And you're listening to Scream Girl Squad.
Yay!
Anyway, and I found myself wondering what's in the back of that truck.
Squirrel!
Jill, why don't you talk to us about this?
Why don't we do the rating system?
Yeah, or no, we do a synopsis first, and then we...
Oh, do we synopsize first?
That's a verb,
Sure.
right? Yeah. So Jill...
Synopsitize?
Synopsitize. So Jill and I took it upon ourselves this fine evening to watch one of these examples of modern horror cinema that I don't believe got a theatrical release. I think it was going to, and then it got pushed back and shelved and changed hands, and they finally just put it out there. Yeah. So we were able to rent it.
Mm-hmm. It's called Polaroid.
And it's called Polaroid.
And believe it or not, it's about a camera.
Who'd have thunk it?
Weird.
When I tried to type it into rent it, I got lazy and I typed in Polar and then hit enter, and it's like
so
Polar
many
Express and
other
all the
things
Christmas
happen,
things.
yeah, that had nothing to do with cameras, sadly enough.
So Polaroid, as we learned from the trivia, has a plot that's apparently basically identical to the plot of an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Like, exactly. That was the trivia.
Yeah,
exact copy.
I'm not sure
a
if
main
that's
character
true,
shares
though.
the same name with a Goosebumps episode of an also very similar plot line.
Yeah.
Which, again, not sure that's a good thing.
It does make me wonder if the creators are our exact age.
Could
When they
be.
grew up reading Goosebumps and watching Are You Afraid of the Dark and were crazy, strongly influenced by it.
Some of those shows, man, they stay with me. I still remember certain episodes.
Really?
So, yeah. Goosebumps more. There was like the theme park one where they were at the fun house or whatever. And like the doll one, of course.
Oh, yeah, with the
The
ventriloquist.
mask, of course.
Wasn't there one where they, like, make a hamster really big? No. That was an episode of Invader Zim, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
okay.
Yeah. Well, and I remember the books better than the show. And so sometimes I'm like, wait, was that an episode? Or did my little brain imagine that I saw this happening in real life?
That happens to me all the time. Kelly and I were rewatching the old Berserk anime series a little while ago. Mm-hmm. And we watched the last episode on the last DVD. And I'm like, all right, let's pop in the next one. And he told me there's not a next one. And I said, no, there definitely is. This and that happens. This character comes in. He does these things. And Kelly had to remind me that happened in the manga. But it was so vivid. And that's even easier to do with manga because it's like a comic book anyway.
And you're looking at the characters' faces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was convinced I had seen it on the screen.
Yeah.
Action happening. But
Makes sense.
I was definitely one of those Ermagerd Gersprumps kids. So
Me too. I'm pretty sure we traded a bunch back and forth. And
yeah, me and you and Joe.
yeah, and I loved the other R.L. Stine series too, which I think I heard the other day they're making Fear Street, like a movie or a series or something, which was...
Really?
Yeah.
Right on.
So I don't remember where I read that.
I wonder if because the Goosebumps movies did so well.
Maybe.
And
They're
are really
fun.
popular.
Have you watched them?
No, I haven't.
They're surprisingly fun. Like, don't go in expecting, like, Goosebumps, but just take it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really fun, silly, good time. But I like Jack Black. I think he's adorable, so that helps.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if that injected enough interest in R.L. Stine in general.
It could be, like
now
a
they're
resurgence of his popularity.
So they're going to make all of his stuff into movies now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, the movie was pretty fun because Jack Black plays R.L. Stine, and it's like, you can't open the books or the characters come out. Like, somebody comes over and, like, starts letting characters. It's really great.
That sounds pretty
It's kind of
great.
fun. So you have to, like, catch everybody and put them back in their books. It was pretty fun.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
so
back to
Polaroid-
this movie.
Yeah. It definitely does feel like a darker take on something that could have been in the Goosebumps. Like, definitely a Goosebumps-esque story, but they made it a little more modern horror movie, and there's definitely a lot more death. But basically the gist of the movie is that there is a haunted Polaroid camera, and if someone takes your picture with this Polaroid camera, bad things happen to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Pretty classic haunted object tale.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't touch it or it's going to kill you.
Yep.
The huge.
Pretty much. Makes you just, like, afraid of buying things in antique shops.
Don't go to yard sales.
Yeah.
What was that one movie that I actually really liked where they go to the yard sale and they get the box and it's like a haunted jewelry box or something?
The Possession?
I think so.
A young girl buys an antique box at a yard sale, unaware that inside the collectible lives a...
And it has Jeffrey Dean Morgan in it.
What? Mm-hmm. Was it good?
It was pretty fun.
All right.
I mean, you know, small child gets a thing at a yard sale and tries to kill everybody. So, kind of like this one.
The demon in the box speaks Polish. Are you Polish? Okay.
You gotta give those guys a ride, man.
Welcome to Brooklyn. All right. Well, I'll put The Possession on my list of movies Kelly and I need to watch some weekend. But in the meantime, I suppose we should probably discuss this actual movie.
Sorry. I'm really squirreling over here.
You and me both, man. It was a weird day.
Yes.
So, yeah. And I feel a little bit jumpy from the movie, to be perfectly honest. And so my energy is a little bit weird.
Yep.
So I have a feeling this episode will be very hard to edit. And that we will be dang lucky if we have something worth airing.
Good times. We pull it together, woman.
Thank goodness you're too far away from me to slap me across the face.
Oh, I was going to pull it together.
So, Polaroid.
Yes. Polaroid.
I suppose we should rate it.
Yeah. This is my part, right? Okay. So, for those of you who are new to the podcast or don't remember how we do things, we like to rate it on two different scales. One is enjoyability and one is fright factor. So enjoyability we base on some kind of treat that we consume whilst watching the movie because we are munch mouths. Munch mouths. We love to snack on things. And fright factor we're based off something in the movie. So enjoyability, I'm going to say Crumbl cookies. So on a scale of 1 to 5 Crumbl cookies, how much did you enjoy this movie, Caryn?
Okay. Are we going to use like a specific Crumbl cookie? Because that Oreo one was pretty dang good.
That sets the bar a little high.
I'll be honest, I really enjoyed this movie. Especially for the first 3/4 of it. And for me, that's sort of standard anyway. A lot of horror movies, especially horror movies that were based on shorts first, kind of, I think, lose a little bit of fun near the end. But for this one, I had a lot of fun. I can't wait for Kelly to come home so I can rewatch it with him.
Yeah.
And I will actually rewatch it with him.
That's awesome.
So for me personally, I give Polaroid a 4 out of 5 Crumbl cookies. I think it was a ton of fun. Definitely worth watching. We'll watch again.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Say Shannon's catchphrase.
What's Shannon's catchphrase?
She was complaining too many podcasters say that's fair.
That's fair. Shannon, I concur with this assessment. You're welcome. Please leave that in. So, on a scale of 1 to 5 haunted Polaroid cameras, how much did it scare you?
Oh, man. I'm wavering a little bit between 2.5 and 3. I kind of want to give it 3 because there were some parts of it that were done really well, lots of good tension. And when I had to go take care of cat chores and go get the stuff to set up for the podcast, I had to open a closet door and go inside of a closet to retrieve something, and I was not down with it. I didn't want to be in there.
Yeah.
So to me, that bumps it up a little bit. But on the other hand, it did have some classic pitfalls of horror movies where the more we saw of the malevolent thing, the less scary the thing became. So I think I'm going to have to go with 2.5.
I was going to say 2. So you could probably bump mine up to 2.5. That'd be okay.
I'm comfortable with 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I definitely had some parts I was nervous. And I agree with you. There were definitely some well-done scenes. But I was never necessarily scared. I'm going to be more nervous, like, to go get in my car in the dark and drive home alone and, like, pull into my garage by myself, right? Like, that part's going to make me nervous.
Yes. It will linger with you.
Yeah, but while watching the movie, I was never really nervous. So, 2.
2. All right, 2 it is.
Yeah.
So we gave it 4 Crumbl cookies and 2 haunted Polaroid cameras for now. But as we saw last week, maybe by the time we're done picking the movie apart, we might change our minds one direction or another.
That's true. It happens all the time.
So basically, keep listening, people. Don't bail on us right now.
Hold on for one more day.
Oh, good. No, that replaces the song that was in my head for the entirety of that movie.
Which was what?
Do you want to take my picture?
Yes. Why did they not use that song? That's magical.
Licensing, I guess. Especially near the climax of the movie. It was just playing in my head at a volume rivaling the television.
That's funny because at one point that terrible Nickelback song came in my head.
Oh, that's even better.
When they're like looking at the picture of all the friends. Look at this photograph.
That is my favorite Vine in the world. And if I want to make Kelly laugh in a meeting or something, all I have to do is send him the GIF from that Vine. Because they replaced the photograph in that video with just like a line graph. So he says, look at this graph. And that's it. And then the sound cuts out and it sort of just freezes on him awkwardly smiling. A graph in his hand. It's the best.
I love it.
And on that note,
on to the movie.
On to the movie.
Let's just spoilerize this whole...
Spoilers. So, Polaroid, when it opened, Jill and I were excitedly chit-chatting about how it kind of felt like the opening to Scream.
It really did, because it kind of just throws you in immediately. And the girl in the beginning is pretty famous on Riverdale right now, so I think they were kind of trying to suck in the teenagers with, here's this person who, of course, is going to be in the whole movie, you know.
Do teenagers watch Riverdale, or do just 35-year-olds? Because I asked my niece and nephew, and they do not.
Yeah, I have no idea.
But everyone
probably more like
does.
young 20s or something.
Or people like you and me who are watching Degrassi and have no business doing that.
I love that crap. I talk about it on this podcast all the time. I will watch the new episodes of Riverdale when they are added onto Netflix. Anywho, so it's these 2 girls and they're just sitting in a bedroom and they're just going through a box of stuff.
Yeah, not a whole lot of context about
why,
the stuff.
Where they are.
They're in a very old-looking house.
Yeah.
It seems a little dilapidated. Maybe it's just dark.
But yeah, no context. Just these 2 girls laughing and going through a box of stuff. They find a red rubber ball and toss it down a dark hallway and laugh. And Caryn and I were like, oh, that's going to come back later.
And over one of their shoulders, there's an old creepy, like, kid's doll. Like a porcelain doll.
There's enough, like, unsettling things in the room that you're like, this is not going to end well.
No.
So yeah, you're just already like, oh no, I know where this is going. So then they pull out a camera and they're like, ooh, fun, let's take our pictures. And
yeah, one of them doesn't even know what it is because it's such an old Polaroid camera that it's the kind that folds up flat.
Yeah.
So that you can like tuck it into your jacket breast pocket or something.
Yeah, and to be honest, if I saw just the flatness of I wouldn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Like, if you opened it, I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's a Polaroid camera. But just looking at the case, I don't know that I would have known right off the bat what it was.
Yeah. It is pretty cool the way it unfolds and becomes a Polaroid camera. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like, you're like, how did that fold up? I don't even get it.
I've always thought Polaroid cameras were cool for that reason.
Yeah. I saw one a couple of months ago at a store in West Jordan called Funky Junk. which is kind of a blend between a consignment store for people who make crafts at home and also for funky antique junk. And they had several Polaroids, including the Polaroid box cameras that fold down into like a box. Mm-hmm. And I should have bought them. They're probably gone now.
Yeah.
And they had like creepy old projectors. And
That's
it's like
awesome.
the kind that play a film reel. And I want them just because they're probably haunted.
Well, and like, how cool would that be just to display like in your TV room, like as a decoration? Here's a haunted old film reel thing. Like hang that on the wall. That'd be amazing.
All right, you get me. And you've just totally given me permission to blow money on that next time I'm out there.
Let's go to Funky Junk.
Yeah.
Really hard to say.
Funky Junk. It's hard not to add like an extra Y.
Funky Junky.
Yeah. Anyway, so they take out the Polaroid camera, and one of the two girls, the famous one from Riverdale, she explains that it was her mom's, and her mom was really into photography, I guess.
I think.
Yeah. So, and this is obviously during modern times because one of them has a smartphone and she's talking about how some boy liked her picture on Instagram.
Yeah.
And the other girl's saying, well, I wouldn't want to take a picture of me in lingerie and put it on the internet where everyone could see. I'd want to have a special one that I could give to just that boy, and he'd be the only person that has it. Mm-hmm. And so they decide to get her all dressed up in her skivvies and take a picture of her with the Polaroid camera. And I really liked what they did when the flash popped on the Polaroid camera, because it did that thing kind of like in Fight Club where they insert just like a single frame of something. Yeah. So it's quick enough that your eye catches that something was there.
Something's wrong.
Yeah. But too slow or too fast for your slow human brain to process what you saw. Yeah.
I feel that we should mention the tagline of this film.
Oh my goodness.
Just before we get started, what was the tagline of this film?
Okay, so it depends. If you're looking at the film poster on streaming services, the tagline that's written on the bottom of the Polaroid might say, "Evil develops," which is hilarious. But the tagline, according to IMDb, is even better. It says, "Beware this camera. Once you take it, it takes you."
Yeah. So good. So they take their picture. There's kind of a silhouette, shadowy figure behind them. Her. It's just the one girl, right?
Yeah.
Behind her. And they're a little creeped out by it, but whatever.
So they take the photo, and her friend's like, all right, I gotta split. And so her friend walks her out the front door and then comes back upstairs by herself. And as she's walking up the stairs, you can hear that sound of the flash on old Polaroid cameras warming up the way that it used to, and it made that high-pitched me. That. I should do sound effects for a living.
You should.
So it's making that sound, but it keeps getting higher and higher and higher.
And like just keeps charging.
Yeah. Way too long. And she gets upstairs and the Polaroid is sitting on the floor. The camera, I should say, is just sitting on the floor by itself and kind of clicking on its own. And she picks up the picture that she had taken of herself, and now, in the time it took her to walk her friend with the door, a little bit of extra has shown up in the photo. And there's what looks like the silhouette of a man kind of standing behind her. But it's faint enough that if you were looking at the photo and not watching a horror movie, you would be like, oh, that's not a silhouette of a man. That's just the way the light's hitting it.
Yeah, especially Polaroids. They did weird things.
Yeah. So she kind of brushes it off and leaves the room.
So she walks in the hallway. It's all dark. She's got one of those amazing horror movie attics.
Where, with the ladder.
You know, the ladder comes down from above. And she walks past, and sure enough, that red bouncy ball comes bouncing out of the attic and down the little ladder steps and, like, chases her down the hall, kind of.
Yeah.
Which freaks her out, understandably, right?
Yeah, but then she does what none of us would do, and she climbs the ladder into the attic.
Yeah. She's like, I'm going to go see who threw this ball where no one goes.
And you're at home screaming at your television for her to stop being so dumb.
Yep.
And get out of the house.
So she climbs into the dark, scary attic. And it's creepy. I mean, it's exactly what you want an attic in a scary movie to look like.
Yeah.
There's, like, sheets over dummies and, like, furniture covered and just, like, everything looks like it could come to life and kill you.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of insulation off to the side and, like, plastic that covers the insulation. And as she's up there, there's this breathing sound, this sound. It sort of sounds like the way that the old man breathes in Insidious 3. It's a ragged breathing, but it mimics the rise in tone of the charging flashbulb.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
So it kind of gets a little higher. Mm-hmm. And she glances over, and there's, like, a thing in the plastic covering.
Yeah, plastic. And, like, little hands come out, but they're not normal hands. Like, really long demon fingers and...
super gray skin.
Yeah, kind of gray and slimy looking, sort of.
Yeah.
Reach out and start moving the plastic. So she runs.
Yep.
Which, you know, first smart thing she's done this whole time.
But she trips because she's in an attic, and she falls kind of head first out of the stairs. And
is, like, hanging by her feet.
Yeah.
Terrifyingly. And then immediately gets pulled back up into the attic, and you just hear her scream.
Yeah. So she's dead.
Mm-hmm. And it really did remind me of Scream, just in the way that it rose really quickly at the very beginning of the movie, right? Yeah. Like, it's just, boom, this is where we're at, this is what we're about, the end.
Yep.
And I love that.
Yeah.
As I think we've talked about before, Scream is the greatest horror movie opening ever.
It is super good.
Fight me.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, if anyone has something better, bring it on. I want to hear about it.
So then, of course, the opening title screen comes on, and they couldn't resist. They had it sort of develop. The word Polaroid slowly comes on the screen, just like a Polaroid picture developing, which is very cool.
Very cool.
And then it's school picture day.
It's school picture day, and there's this kind of homely looking girl. I mean, she's adorable, but you can tell she's trying to not be like the hey, look at me girl.
Yeah, she's very shy.
When I say homely, I mean that's what they were going for, but they used this like really gorgeous girl, which they always do.
Yeah.
Like, you know, movies. So she's trying to get her picture taken. She's got this big, thick scarf all around her neck. And they're like, hey, don't you want to smile? And she's like, no. And then they're like, do you want to take off your scarf? And you hear all these kids giving like, scarfy. And she's just like, no. And they just take her picture. I don't think she even smiles and just wanders away. And you're like, what's up with this girl in the scarf?
And what's up with the lame high schoolers that the best they can come up with is, hey, scarf girl.
Right? Like, I don't... Cool.
Not that I'm encouraging them to get better at bullying.
But be smarter. I don't know.
Put some wit into it.
Right?
Stop being so lazy when you're cruel.
Well, and who cares that she wears a scarf?
Yeah. Okay, but, I mean...
It was winter. It was cold. Everyone was wearing coats.
Yeah.
Who cares?
But when I was in grade school, the popular girls made fun of me for having plastic barrettes instead of metal ones. And because instead of wearing...
Catholic school.
Instead of wearing... nylon type material, my tights were really thick and woven. Awkward days. But they'll pounce on the tiniest difference between you and them.
They will find that thing that you don't like about yourself.
Exactly. So, this kind of awkward girl wearing a bright yellow scarf, her name is Bird.
For some reason. Apparently because of the Goosebumps episode.
Yeah.
And then she goes in the parking lot and creepily takes a picture of some boy from a distance. Mm-hmm. And then he, like, catches her and she gets all shifty about it and drives away.
Yeah. So she's a photography enthusiast.
Yeah. A little stalkery.
In an awkward way. Yeah. She also works in an antique store, which for me in high school, that would have been a dream job.
Yeah.
And it honestly sounds pretty great because her friend Tyler, whose uncle owns the place, comes in and comments on how there's not anyone in there. And she's
like I'm pretty sure she just, like, plays with old stuff.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, would I have this job if there were customers? No.
Yeah.
I like it because there's no one in here. But Tyler, who's a pretty cute boy, he brings her a find that he got at a yard sale recently. Mm-hmm. And it's a Polaroid camera, same one, folds down all flat. She's very excited because apparently this is a Polaroid SX70 and it's the same kind Ansel Adams used, and she's really nerding out about it.
She's like, Ansel Adams and someone else, but to be honest, Ansel Adams is the only one I know, use this kind of camera, and she's going on and on, and the boy's like, they're photographers, right? And she's like, yes. But like at the same time you're like, oh, it's cute, he's trying. Like,
yeah,
I was touched by the boy's effort.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
Yeah.
But here's another piece of trivia we found on IMDb. So apparently the SX70 Polaroid camera didn't actually have a flash in it. So it wouldn't have made that like that noise or flashed the way that it did. So I'm curious why the filmmakers didn't simply pick a different type of Polaroid camera that did have those things to avoid the potential for anachronisms.
Yeah.
I don't think most viewers would care, honestly, but this is the kind of crap that derails me when I'm working on like a short story or something, because I'll go off into this Wikipedia rabbit hole trying to make sure that I don't name a freaking flower that doesn't actually grow in whatever dumb part of the world I'm writing about.
Yeah.
So,
because people notice.
Some people do.
Some people really, really care about these things.
Yeah. And those same people, they allow little crap like that to ruin things way more than it should. But even if you do notice those things, or even if I notice those things, with the notable exception of National Treasure, I think I'm pretty good about noticing the little things that don't work, the anachronisms, the stuff that doesn't fit. And as long as the bigger picture still works, it might take me out of the story for a second and go, wait a minute. But then, if you allow yourself to be pulled back in.
My dad constantly laughs at them using wrong engine noises for airplanes and movies. And I'm like, absolutely no one else on the planet would even know that, but cool. And he like still watches them. He doesn't care, but he just comments about it.
Yeah. Because most people don't know. Anyway, if you are a camera geek, it might bother you somewhat that they're using a camera that shouldn't do what the camera's doing. If you're one of
those people, sure.
Yeah. So, to test out her fancy new camera, she, of course, takes a picture of the handsome boy.
Mm-hmm. He's really, like, I would have been in love with him in high school. He had that, like, nerdy yet adorable thing about him that I like in a boy. So, yeah. So, as they're waiting for the picture to develop, he kind of tries to kiss her, and she acts surprised and isn't down with getting kissed. And, like, Caryn and I thought that she was interested in him up to that point, and then the way she rejected him was like, oh, what are you doing? And we were like, oh, okay. Well, and I was confused because he kind of looked like the boy that she was taking the picture of in the parking lot. So I thought it was that boy, but then it wasn't that boy. So once we saw the boy she was taking the picture of, I was like, okay, it's all coming together.
Yeah.
And I think in my head I was like, why would you not want to kiss him? You were stalking him in the parking lot. So
I think this is one thing about getting older. All teenagers are starting to look the same.
Maybe.
So she takes the cute picture, and then she dashes off to go home. And does she notice at that point that there's like the shadow on the picture, or does the shadow not show up till later?
I don't know that she even looked at the picture because he tried to kiss her and she ran away.
Yeah. So as she's running away, he's like, oh, don't forget the case. But she doesn't grab it. And as he grabs the case out of the box that he'd brought in, you can see the Polaroid of the girl who had died at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And at first I thought they just did that to make sure that anyone in the audience who hadn't put together at this point that it was the same camera would be like, oh, it's the same camera. But I think what they were really illustrating is that the shadowy figure behind the girl wasn't there anymore.
I think you're right, but I think that's something you'd only notice on rewatch because you're not looking for it in the beginning.
Exactly, yeah. So she dashes off. They give us some background color information. Her mom is on her own. She's very flustered. Things are stressful. She's promising the main character, Bird, things won't always be like this. Bird has a dog. She's about to take a picture of the dog with the Polaroid camera, and I'm like, don't you dare take a picture of that dog.
We're all like, no, leave the dog alone.
And the dog doesn't want it.
The dog is having none of it. The dog is like whining and like backing away, and you can just tell the dog is just not about this camera at all.
Yeah.
And so she tries to take a picture of the dog, but misses because the dog's just like, nope.
Yeah, she can't keep him in frame. And right as she's about to take the picture, someone grabs her.
Yeah.
And it turns out to be her best friend, Casey.
Yeah.
So Casey would like to take Bird to a party. And Bird doesn't want to go because Bird is sad.
Yep.
And Casey...
And apparently Bird doesn't leave her house.
Yeah.
She's like, it's a weeknight. And her friend's like, duh, that's why we have to go. Which is such a Caryn thing to do.
It's not my fault. I have FOMO.
So it's a costume party. They have to get all dressed up. And she's like, here, I brought you Red Riding Hood. And Bird's like, that's a dumb costume. And she's like, come up with something else in 10 minutes and you can wear it. And so she's like, all right, I'm putting on this costume.
And what's cute is Bird is the Red Riding Hood and Casey, her best friend, is a wolf.
Yeah.
I actually
So
really
it's
like
cute
that.
that they were like a couple costume.
Yeah.
We never did that.
Aw, it's not too late.
It's true.
So they hop into the car with their two friends who I'm not sure what their names are. In my head, I called them girlfriend and boyfriend.
Me too.
Oh, good. Because that's basically
That's their purpose.
Yeah, their purpose is that they are in love.
Yep. They pick them up and they're like, hey, it's our anniversary. And her boyfriend's like, why didn't you tell me? And she's like, you're supposed to know. And then they started calling each other bae. And Bird awkwardly says, did you know bae means poop in German? And,
Or Dutch or something.
Or Dutch or something. And they all were just like, what? And then the boyfriend was like, yep, gonna keep calling you bae. And then the girlfriend was like, no, don't call me poop. And it was funny.
Danish. It's in Danish.
Danish.
Yes.
That's right.
So as they're driving to the party, the scene shifts back to cute Tyler, the boy at the antique shop. And he's at work tonight instead of being at a fun party. And someone has left him a box of new old crap to go through.
Yeah.
And to see, I guess, if it works and if maybe the slides are worth selling or something.
Yeah, start playing with all the stuff.
So he's going through like a ring of slides in an old slide projector. And he's kind of rating the slides out loud as he does it. Some of them are weird family party photos and awkward stuff. And so he's chatting out loud about that. And he notices that one of them has a strange shadow on it. It almost looks like a shadow that's being cast from behind. And when he goes to the next slide, it's not there. And when he goes back to the previous slide, it's not there. And I love what Tyler does.
Me too.
Because it's what I would do.
Go ahead. Tell them about it. Tell the folks at home.
So he's immediately like, what the crap? Someone's in here casting a shadow. So he very coolly walks backwards a few steps and gets a hammer.
Yeah. Like it was one of those subtle, like, got it.
And then he very smoothly and quietly goes up to the big sheet that's hanging up that he's projecting on and yanks it down with the hammer in one hand like he's gonna just bean somebody in the head. But there's no one there.
Yep. Yeah. And so you're just like, oh. And that was a good, pretty tense scene. Like, you know, he's slowly creeping up with a hammer, you know, and pulls back the curtain, nothing. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, okay, he's cool. And then the machine starts malfunctioning and clicking. So he turns around to go check out what's going wrong with the slide projector. And behind him, the sheet that he just pulled down rises from the ground. Like in the shape of a person.
Yeah. And that part was scary until it moved and attacked him.
And then it wasn't scary.
It was kind of cheesy, to be fully honest.
It kind of, flew at him hard. And just kind of smothered him and he died.
But bloodily somehow.
Somehow, ripped him apart, maybe? I don't even know. It wasn't super clear because it's PG-13, so it just cut away.
Yeah.
And
I don't mind that at all. Yeah. I'm good not seeing it. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. It was fine. He died. It was sad.
It was sad.
So back to the party. Because it cuts away from that. Like, he gets attacked by a sheet, and then, boom, we're back at the party. Bird is there with all of her friends, and she's kind of awkwardly, like, she's at the party, but not really a part of things, kind of wandering around. And she sees the guy she took a picture of in the parking lot. And he comes up to her, and he's like, hey, how'd the picture turn out? And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you know, when you took a picture of me in the parking lot. And she's like, no, I didn't. I was just testing my camera. And he's like, sure. You can tell he doesn't really believe her, but like wanted an excuse to talk to her, which is pretty cute.
Yeah. And this kid's name is Connor.
Connor, yes. So she and Connor like chit-chat, flirt a little. And then her friends are trying to take a selfie. And it's not really working. Oh, and they're like, "Pixar, it didn't happen," you know. And, which I love to say to people. And even though it's a terrible saying. So, and
it's one of those moments that when you see it in films, you think, thank goodness that wasn't a thing when we were in high school.
Oh my gosh. I know we talk about this a lot, but I'm so glad there was no social media when we were in high school. I can't even imagine.
And even when we did have a camera, odds were like 90-1 that you'd get the pictures back and they'd be awful and not turn out right. And someone's thumb would have been over the viewfinder.
Exactly. If you remembered to develop the pictures at all. I'm pretty sure I have some film canisters at home that I'm like, do people even develop these anymore? Can I take these somewhere? So she's like, "Oh, hey guys, I'll take your picture," and pulls out the Polaroid camera. And they're like, "Woohoo!" So it's Connor, girlfriend, boyfriend, and friend Casey.
Yeah.
Well, and Casey's not there yet. So it's just girlfriend, boyfriend, and Connor. And then at the last second, Casey, like, jumps her head in. And photobombs. So it's all of them in this picture. And the picture develops, and there's the little shadowy figure behind them all.
It definitely looks different from the shadowy figure that had been behind the girl in the opening.
Mm-hmm. It's a little more distinct.
Yeah.
A little more clear.
Yeah. And
there's no thinking it may be a camera trick.
Yeah. And then right immediately after that, the girl who's hosting the party, a girl named Avery, she grabs the Polaroid camera away from Bird and takes a selfie.
That's right.
Yeah, so right then, after she takes the selfie, the cops show up. And they're there for Bird. And they take Bird down to the station.
So Sheriff Skinner.
Sheriff Skinner. He's played by Mitch something, right?
He was Skinner in the X-Files.
Yeah.
You all know what he looks like.
He was the only character, or the only actor, I should say, that I recognized well enough to actually place.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
I knew it was an accident.
Mitch Pileggi. So he's explaining to her, your friend Tyler died, and we'd sure like to know what you know about that.
Where you been? How long were you there? Things like that.
Yeah, he's asking all the standard Special Victims Unit questions.
So she's horrified. What do you mean he died? You know? And then he says, "Hey, I know you. I remember the accident. And you were so brave."
Yeah.
Or, "I remember your dad and the accident. You were so brave."
Yeah. So this kind of fills in a little bit of why she wears that scarf. Because she has like a gash or a burn or something on her neck that's pretty prominent. And so she hides that a lot of the time.
And so they say that this accident was a year ago. And her dad died. And she survived the crash but was horribly injured. And she goes home to her mom, and her mom's like, "I'm so sorry, this is so horrible," and is, like, consoling her. And they kind of talk about the dad a little bit.
Yeah, but they don't really explain the circumstances of the accident.
Right.
So they're still tugging you along a little bit. Keep watching if you want to know what happened to her dad. You're going to have to keep watching.
Keep watching. Yeah.
So after Bird talks to her mom, she goes upstairs.
Oh, that's right.
And she's looking at her photos from the evening. And she notices that the shadow that she had seen earlier on the picture of Tyler isn't there anymore. But a sort of similar shadow is now on Avery's selfie. And she gets out her cell phone and flips to Avery's number and thinks about calling her and then doesn't and just goes to bed.
Yeah.
So then it flashes back to Avery.
So Avery's at home in the dark, because why would you turn on lights when you're home alone? You know, the huge. And she, like, goes in the basement, I think. She's, like, in the basement for a minute. She gets scared. There's a shadow behind her. She runs.
She has all these weird skeleton decorations that she's moving around and putting away.
Maybe because it was a costume party. They said something earlier about how they had missed Halloween or something.
Yeah.
So they were having this big party. So I think she was putting away, like, the decorations because her parents aren't home. She doesn't want to get caught having a party. So she's, like, cleaning up, whatever. So she sees the little shadowy figure coming at her and she runs.
Yeah.
And while she's running, she hits her head on a light that by no means should be there.
It shouldn't be low enough for this girl.
So it's hanging from the ceiling, and this girl's probably like 5'4", and it hits her square in the face.
Yeah.
So whoever hung this light is a moron. Like, what purpose does this serve? So she hits this light just square straight in the face, and she falls down. Mm-hmm. And she falls down, and the shadowy figure grabs her and attacks.
This is a cool scene, the way that his hands look when it grabs her neck, because its hands, it's like one of them wraps around her from the right side of her face, and the other one is wrapped around it kind of backwards and upside down. You'll see it if you Google the film and look at any of the promotional imagery, because it's such an interesting looking thing that they did. But he snaps her neck.
Yeah. And he's got those long, spindly demon fingers again, which are just unsettling all in themselves.
And I liked these shots better when all you could see were the hands. I liked when all you could see was a piece of the ghost.
Which we've talked about before. We prefer before scary movies show you the monster.
Yeah.
And so, which I'm not going to lie to you, it's so hard to say the monster in front of you and then not say the what. Every time.
Would you stop saying the what every time I say the monster?
The what? Every time.
Oh, C-Lab.
It's like the only episode I remember of C-Lab. But
isn't that the one where they make Mophead Debbie?
I think so.
Oh, I need to rewatch
but
that
every
show.
time I say the monster and I look at you, I'm like, in my head. And I just had to tell you out loud that this happens every time we do this show.
I'm quite pleased that you did. We need to watch more monster movies just so that can keep happening.
Yes. Anyway, so what were we talking about?
So the next day, Bird doesn't want to go to school, obviously, because her friend died.
Her friend just died.
And then her other friend, Casey, calls her on the phone, the one who was dressed up like a wolf, and she's like, man, you're not going to believe this. Avery fell down her stairs to her basement last night and broke her neck. She's dead. Both Tyler and Avery died of the same day. So Bird runs upstairs and grabs her Polaroids again, and she notices now that the shadow she'd seen on Avery's photo is gone, and it has moved to the group picture. The one with the 4
And so she's pretty well decided the camera's killing people.
Yeah, she figures it out pretty quick.
She's a smart one, that one. So she goes to school.
Oh, she tries to break the camera. And when she throws it against the wall, it kind of like puts off this energy burst and blasts her back. So it's not going to be that easy to break the curse.
So, yeah. She realizes, oh, crap, it's going to be harder than I hoped. So she goes to school. Everyone's like putting roses on a display table with pictures of the 2 dead students. They're clearly having some sort of memorial situation happening. She goes into the cafeteria, and her friends are all sitting at a table, and she walks up and it just immediately is like, the camera's going to kill us all. Just FYI, we're all going to die. And they're like, I don't think it was an accident. And her one friend says, there's no way her neck could have twisted like that on its own. And Connor comes up and joins them because he can tell they're having some sort of intense conversation. And they're all talking about, no, it's the camera, it's the camera, it's the camera. And they're like, well, let's just burn the picture then. Like, they're all kind of like, whatever, you're crazy. So boyfriend's like, let's just burn the picture then. And pulls out a lighter in the middle of the cafeteria and sets a fire, and nobody cares. My first problem with this movie. So he pulls out a lighter in the middle of the cafeteria, sets the picture on fire, and his girlfriend immediately bursts into flames. And he's like over trying to put her out and doesn't really understand what's happening. And like they have a fire extinguisher and everything, and they can't get her fire to come out. And Bird finally is like, and like pats the picture, and then the fire stops.
Yeah.
And while girlfriend is on fire, the best friend, whose name I can't remember. Casey. Casey starts catching on fire too. Like her hand is smoking or something.
Yeah.
And then they put out the fire and it all goes away.
Yeah. So they have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Because
she's severely burned.
Yeah.
And when they put out the fire, the picture grows back.
That part made me laugh out loud.
Yeah, me too.
The effects were kind of silly.
But they can't leave it burned, I guess, because... Anyway, we'll talk about that later. But, so the picture grows back into a full picture. Which, listen, later in the movie. They mutilate pictures to kill people. So why did that one grow back and the other one's not?
Sometimes they do.
Because, like, the stabby one.
That one did. It grew back.
But then, like, the crumpled one.
The rippy one.
The rippy one. He stayed ripped.
Yeah. Well, but even though the picture grows back, the damage is still real.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, that's probably why. Anywho. So they go to the hospital.
There's a nurse that Joe recognized.
There's a nurse from Degrassi. And
I'm not laughing at you, by the way. I'm laughing with you because I am 100% as deeply invested in rewatching that old show as you are. So.
We used to watch way too much of, and now we're doing it again.
Callie was making fun of me because I had it playing the other night while I was making dinner.
Yeah.
And he was pretty seriously concerned that I'm watching a TV show that was meant for junior high school and high school students.
Shut up, Kelly.
I was too old for it back then. I'm much too old for now. But I explained, hey, I have to have something that doesn't matter in the background when I do menial tasks. And I said, it's either this or Parks and Rec again. And then he backed off real quick because for some reason he's deeply concerned about the amount of time I spend rewatching Parks and Rec. If he comes home and catches me watching it, he's genuinely worried that I've fallen into a black hole of depression and that he needs to, like, pull me out. And I mean, he's not wrong, so he's very intuitive.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times.
Anyway.
This is better. This puts me in a deep hole of depression sometimes, so there's that.
Oh, the storylines on Degrassi are sometimes just heart-wrenching.
I just can't handle the squirrely kid thing that's going to happen. So anyway, so they're at the hospital, and the nurse comes in, and she's like, hey, your girlfriend's out of surgery. She's going to be okay if you want to come see her. And the boyfriend's like, yeah. And goes off with his girlfriend. And everybody else is like, hey, we should figure out more about this camera. So they go looking for the case the camera came in. This is my favorite part. So they go to her place of work, of which she does not have a key, but knows exactly how to easily break into.
Yes.
Which I found very mysterious.
She's able to, like, unscrew an air vent from the outside.
And just shimmy right on in. And she just knew that was going to work. And she had the tool to take the air vent. Like, she just was prepared to shimmy in the air vent and knew that that was the way to go. And this is quite concerning to me because how?
And why? Yeah.
Did you ever go in a back alley and shimmy in through an air vent easily? Like, it is a person-sized air vent. And who makes that in a building? Like, what if it was a bank and not, like, an antique store? And, like, here's this 3-meter wide portal that if you fire something into it, it's going to blow up the whole Death Star. Nobody thought to cover that up.
So, for sure, it is concerning that she gets in there with an amount of comfort and ease that makes you pretty confident this isn't the first time that she's done this for whatever reason.
It's a little concerning. And they just
never
don't talk
that.
about it. Just, nope, she does this all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And she's on her own. She left Connor in the truck because he's in the picture and she's not.
Right.
He tries to argue, it's not exactly safer in the truck, but whatever. She goes in and leaves him alone.
Yeah. So while she's in the shop, he's in the truck and starts, like, playing with the camera. Oh, it starts, like, doing its charge up thing.
Yeah.
And he picks up the picture and he's looking at it and he sees something in the picture and gets really concerned.
Yeah.
And you don't know what it is.
Yes.
But you're just like, oh, what did he see?
Yes.
Like, is it a shadow moving? Like, that's what I assumed it was. So back to Bird in the store.
Which I can't even say.
Back to the bird who went through the hole. So Bird is back in the shop and she finds the camera case.
Yeah.
And a shadowy figure starts coming at her. So she runs and shimmies back out through that hole and her scarf catches and it starts to strangle her.
Yeah.
And just at that moment, Connor shows up and takes the scarf off and pulls her out of the hole and they run.
Yeah. And as the shadow figure is chasing her, he tries to reach around a sheet of plastic to get to her as she's escaping, and his fingers kind of cross in front of steam from a radiator, and he pulls back in pain, and something weird happens with his fingers. So clearly he doesn't like steam, maybe, or heat, or water, or something about that he didn't like.
So Connor grabs her, pulls her out, and says, "You're never going to believe this, but you're in the picture."
Yeah. Bird's confused. She's wondering, why is this thing after me? I'm not in the photo. And Connor explains, yeah, you are. Your reflection is in the window behind us.
Yeah. So she is actually in the picture. So now they're like, uh-oh. I mean, she was already concerned for her friends, but now she's concerned for her own safety as well. And so things just get kicked up a notch.
I liked that twist.
Yeah, me too. So then back at the hospital, boyfriend goes off by himself, and he's just off wandering around, and you're like, oh no, he's gonna die. He's by himself. He's wandering around the hospital. But meantime, girlfriend's in the hospital bed by herself and gets taken from her bed.
The lights flicker and something yanks her.
And he's wandering around acting all suspicious, and one of the nurses is like, what are you doing? Go back. And he's like, okay. And goes back in the room and can't find her. She's not in her bed. He, like, slowly approaches a curtain and tries to pull it open.
Blood.
Yeah. Tries to pull open the curtain. Nothing. Can't find her. Turns around, and she drops from the ceiling. She's hung. So next it cuts to police and everything talking to him, and he's like, no, you don't understand. She wouldn't kill herself, and screaming. And the friends show up, and he's like mad at Bird.
I'll be honest, I'd be mad at Bird too.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that state and you've just lost someone and you're angry, of course the first person you'd be pissed off at is the person who took the picture that basically told you, hey, these pictures I took are haunted.
For sure. So he's really mad at Bird, starts yelling, screaming. Connor, like, jumps in, and they kind of pull him apart. Bird runs off, and Connor chases her. And they start having this conversation where Bird's like, it's my fault. It's always my fault. And he's like, what are you talking about? And this is where we get to learn more of the backstory.
Yeah. So she explains that when, on the night her father died, he was driving her to a party. And he was also an investigative journalist of some kind who wrote for the local paper. And he said, hey, on the way to the party, I'd like to take a detour and show you this thing I'm working on. But she was a teenager. She had no interest in what's going on with her dad. And she demands to be just taken straight to the party. So he turns the car around, and that's when another car hit them and killed her dad. So she blames herself, thinking that, oh, if only I'd, let him drive me to that place, it would have turned out differently. That kind of regret that we all feel. So, as Connor's trying to comfort her and telling her, hey, if your dad was here, he would tell you this wasn't your fault. And she says, no, if my dad was here, he'd be looking for the why. And that inspires them to start kind of ripping apart the case that the Polaroid camera came in. And they find a little evidence tag tucked inside of the Polaroid case for some reason.
Magically.
Which I don't understand. So obviously the camera at some point was sold at like a police auction, the way that they do with stuff that was seized or taken as evidence or whatever. And so someone bought it, and then instead of throwing the evidence tag away, which is honestly what I would do,
like just
they tuck it in the lining.
I know.
I don't know. I don't get it. But conveniently it's there.
Yep. With a case number and
everything.
Everything. Cutscene to they're in some records place. They don't talk about where they are, why they're there, how they got there, none of it. And they're just in this like library full of stuff.
Yeah.
Like stacks and stacks of, like the basement of a library or a police station with case files. Like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're going through old newspapers, and they find newspaper articles talking about this high school teacher who stalked and killed 3 of his students.
Yeah, and the newspaper articles include pictures that I'm pretty sure would never make it to print in real life. Like the last photos ever taken of these dead teenagers. No.
Why would you put those on the cover of a newspaper? Yeah. And like, here's the creepy pictures he took of the teenagers while he was torturing them.
Yeah.
Like things like that you're like, no. they would not show these pictures of minors being
in a small town newspaper in the 70s.
Right. There's no way. But anyway, so high school teacher freaks out, stalks and kills 3 of his students. And his name matches the initials on the camera case. So they're like, oh, snap, it's his camera. This is the problem. So they're like, we have to go to the house.
Yeah, the house where the photography teacher lived and get to the bottom of this. But the house, it says it was sold shortly after the murders and is in the name of some different woman now. Yeah.
So they decide they need to talk about it with everybody. So they go to this diner, and Bird has kind of figured out this shadowy figure has weaknesses. I don't think he's attacking us right now because we're in the light. So he can't have like strong light or heat or things like that.
Yeah, she says he's similar to film. Yeah. The way that you have to be careful with film when you're developing it.
Yeah. So they think they're safe because they're in this nice lit up diner. Which, why they didn't just do a Darkness Falls after that and stay in the light forever, I don't know. But whatever. So the boys start fighting. I don't remember how they start fighting.
I think
they're to do with Bird.
They're bickering over what to do next. Right. Should we destroy the camera? Because they're not aware, like Bird is, that you can't destroy it. So they're kind of wrestling over it, and the flash goes off, and a picture accidentally gets taken. Yeah, and it's a picture of boyfriend.
And he's like, "No, I'm not going to be the next one to die," and like sees the shadow behind him.
Yeah. They literally see it move from the group photo to the picture of boyfriend.
So he starts freaking out. He's terrified. And he's like, I'm going to take a picture of Bird. Because if anyone deserves to die, it's her.
I loved this scene, honestly. Because he's wielding the camera like a gun. Like he's pointing it at Bird. And she's behaving the same way you would be if someone's pointing a gun at you.
Right. And Connor's getting all protective of her and trying to stop him. And best friend... Casey, I'm never going to remember. Best friend stabs the picture. And the picture is like his hand is out in front of the camera, so his hand is the biggest part. And she stabs the picture through his hand, and it's like his hand was stabbed. And it like is stuck to the wall behind him because she stabbed it like into the table. Yeah. And so he can't, like, I think he drops the camera. He can't do anything else because his hand is like stuck to the wall and it's bleeding and he doesn't understand why, and it's because she had stabbed the picture.
Yeah, this was interesting. Yeah, because a lot of the lore that they're pulling in and creating up to this point was pretty strictly related to photography as it works in the real world and the way you treat film, etc. So then they kind of pulled in this voodoo doll aspect of however the photos get treated, that's how the subject of the photo gets treated. Which I found kind of interesting.
Yeah, which made sense why when they lit the fire.
Yeah. So one thing I really liked about this movie is they would introduce you to little rules, and then they never broke them, that I could tell. They definitely followed the rules of their own universe that they were creating.
Yeah, it was cool.
So all this commotion and people getting stabbied and things like that in the diner draw the attention of the police. And boyfriend hits a police officer. He's, like, struggling to not be dragged away and whatnot.
Yeah, like, accidentally whacks him in the face as all of this is happening. So he, of course, gets arrested. So Bird is now sitting down with Sheriff Skinner, and Connor's with her as well. And they're like, okay, but the camera's haunted. We're all dying off one by one. And he's just like, sure thing. Yeah. Cool story, bro. So... they're like, we have to figure out where this camera came from. And he's like, stay away from that house or I'm going to throw you in a cell with your friend. Yeah. And so then you're like, what house?
Yeah. How does he even know about the house?
Right. Right. So they find out that the killer's wife still lives in the house.
Yeah. She just changed the name on the deed. Yeah. And changed her name, but she's still there.
So they go to her house. They knock on the door. She opens the door and they're like, Mrs. Serial Killer? I can't remember what his name was.
It doesn't matter.
And she's like, no, you have the wrong house. And they're like, wait, I have your husband's camera. And she's like, what? And they show her the camera and she's like, that's not my husband's camera. That's my daughter's camera. So she brings him in, takes him into this room that's perfectly preserved, Miss Havisham, Great Expectations style. They've touched nothing. And she says, this was my daughter's room. And Bird's like, oh, I'm sorry. What happened? You know, and she's very intuitive and she handles it really well. And she's just like, I'm so sorry for your loss. What happened? And she's like, some kids from the high school bullied my daughter. And they took her out one night and took some awful pictures of her and then spread them all over school. And she was so mortified, she hung herself.
Yeah.
And then my husband was so mad when he saw the pictures, he started hunting down the kids one by one and killing them. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, holy crap, this just got real dark real fast. Like, that was a heavy, 30 seconds of film.
It really was. Especially, they showed you some of the style of the photos of the daughter that had been taken, and they were very...
suggestive.
Yeah. So, incredibly sad story.
Yes.
And the mom explains that they confiscated all of the Polaroids. The ones of the daughter, the ones that the dad had taken when he was torturing these kids in the dark room in the basement of the school. And that there was only one photo that they didn't confiscate. And it was the photo that the dad had taken of the one bully who'd gotten away.
And it was, they showed you what happened, that the dad had the bully, tied up with a pillowcase over his head in the photo lab. And the police stormed in and shot him just as he was about to kill this kid.
Yep.
And he, fell into chemicals holding the camera. So he died holding the camera.
In a vat of chemicals, Joker style.
Right.
So
of course,
thus
the
began
two
his
became
superpowers.
One. Yeah. So in the meantime, boyfriend is in jail. And I actually really liked this scene. So the lights all go out outside the jail cell. And it's not like your typical jail cell. It's more of not what you think you see in a movie with the bars.
It's more of a solitary confinement
style
cell.
It's got a closed door. There's no bars. There's just a window. And so he's in there and the lights all go out. And he's looking around and he's like, oh no. He knows, that he's about to die. And he starts to kind of carefully peer out the window, and it's so tense the whole time. And I think you just see fingers outside the window.
Yeah.
And he jumps back, and you can hear something jiggling the door handle, and you're like, do jail cells keep out ghosts? Yeah. So is this gonna be the thing that keeps him safe? And then he turns around and the ghost materializes behind him. And the camera, pans out of the jail cell. And the ghost, stabs him. And the knife, goes through the door. So whatever he stabs him with, goes through the door.
Yeah. And
Caryn yelled, good luck trying to cover that one up, coppers.
Yeah, because thus far all the other killings didn't seem supernatural at all.
No,
they're able to
they were
explain
just
it away.
oh yeah, she fell down the stairs. And,
but this would be a classic locked room mystery.
Right.
Yeah. I was excited about it.
Yeah, it was good. So then they head to the school.
Yeah.
Which is unlocked at all hours of the night, because of course it is. And then they go through the school files, which are also easily accessible.
Yeah.
Because of course they are. They just open a filing cabinet and they're like,
and there they are.
1975. Let's find out who this kid is. Because they're trying to figure out who the kid in the picture is.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, oh, private school files. Here we go. Looking at this one, and just start looking through stuff. And they find out, of course, that the person in the picture is Sheriff Skinner.
Because that's literally the only other character they've introduced at this point that would be the appropriate age.
Right.
So,
anybody else, you'd be like, why are we supposed to care?
Yeah.
Right? He's been the only other person who plays any sort of significant role.
Yeah.
So, other than, Bird's mom, but even then she was in it 30 seconds, and this guy's been in it a little bit more. So, yeah, the second you saw the picture, I was like, Sheriff Skinner's going to be there. And we were right.
And he was.
So, and this is kind of where the movie started going downhill for me, because it was just so predictable the whole time.
Yeah, I liked a few things that were coming up.
That's probably true.
But this is about the point where with basically any type of slasher horror movie, which I know this has a supernatural element, but it also kind of followed the formula of a slasher
movie. Yeah.
This is the point where, for me, now I know all the answers. And so now you're just waiting for the inevitable to happen. So they're messing around with the files pretty much the second that they figure out that it's Sheriff Skinner. He shows up, and he's got their friend Casey. And so he's going to take them all in for trespassing and going to that house and all of that other good stuff. And they accuse him of bullying that girl.
They're like, we know what you did. We know what happened. And he's like, you don't know what you're talking about. And Bird goes to take his picture because they're like, we're just going to let him have him. And then this will all be over. So Bird goes to take his picture, and she's like, I can't do it. And Connor's like, well, I can. And
this part I liked, because this really is kind of an ethical conundrum. Because to save yourself and your other innocent friends,
you have to sacrifice somebody else.
Yeah. Somebody who, sure, is in your mind guilty of something pretty heinous.
Yeah.
You know, something that I think a lot of us in our past, maybe not to that extent did, but you think sometimes about, that person that I mistreated, what happened to them after that, and what am I responsible for because of the direction that their life went, and then that guilt that you carry for the crappiness and the crumminess of being a mean teenager.
And we don't even have anyone who died.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's clearly already suffered, right? And as an adult, you think about that. Like, okay, but he's a grown man now. He's not that person. Like, so you're sort of morally conflicted as well.
Yeah.
And he's like sheriff of the town, and he like has taken a vow to serve and protect. And so you want to hope he's a good guy now. And he's doing this because he feels bad about what happened. And so he's been living his life trying to help people because he saw how bad things were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Bird can't do it. And then Connor snatches the camera. He has no qualms. He takes the picture.
And as he takes the picture, they're like, we'll let him come for you now.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you don't know what happened. Here's what really happened. And he's like, her dad is the one, we were trying to help her. Her dad is the one who took those pictures of her. We were trying to get her away from him, and he freaked out and killed us all.
Yeah.
Or came after us all for trying to help her. And he's like, she killed herself after the murders. Look it up. The dates don't lie.
Yeah.
And
so
suddenly you're like, oh, crap, her dad's a creep. Oh, that sucks.
And they just sacrificed the sheriff who was trying to help the girl, who was like a good kid who was trying to do the best thing. And
trying to get her away from her creepy father. And now they're like, and we sacrificed you to the monster.
Yeah.
Great.
I loved that twist as well.
It was cool.
Plus, it neatly erased the moral gray area for me in the wrong direction. Now that the teenagers have killed this man, but at least there's no ambiguity.
It's true. So the shadow monster, of course, shows up. Fight ensues. And he tears the sheriff's pictures in half.
Which tears the sheriff in half. And it doesn't look very good.
No.
But
you know what happened. It worked. Whatever.
It happened. And so this is where Jill's wondering, well, why didn't the picture put itself back together?
Because the other one did.
Yeah, I don't think they even bothered to show us if it did or not.
Yeah, but like Caryn said, the damage stayed.
Yeah.
So whether or not the picture grew back, the sheriff wasn't going to grow back together.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
So then there's some chase scenes. The teenagers get separated. Connor's off one direction. Casey and Bird are off in another. Casey and Bird run into the gym locker room, and they turn on the faucets so that the shower heads are pumping out hot, steaming water so that they're kind of behind a barrier of steam.
And so the shadow comes, tries to put his hand through the steam, can't do it, leaves. So Bird's like, stay here, Casey. You're safe here. I'm going to go get Connor.
Yeah.
And runs off.
Yeah. I did also like that the shower kind of became a sanctuary, because after the first It movie, I've never trusted shower rooms.
I remember us in junior high, like, no thank you, I will shower at home.
They had to threaten to fail us to get us to do it.
Yeah. I was like, have you not seen this movie? Anywho, so she goes off to find Connor. She finds him in the hallway. They decide they need to get the camera.
Yeah.
and go somewhere where the ghost will be fully formed.
Yep.
So they're going to take a picture of the ghost, demon, what are we calling it?
Yeah. And I liked that too, because I've been wondering how on earth they were going to beat him.
Right. And so I kind of liked this way.
Yeah.
Right?
And I liked that I had to wonder about it.
Yeah.
And that I didn't figure it out before the movie told me.
I hadn't, no. So when they said that, I was like, that is actually quite clever. Yeah. So I enjoyed that. So they get the camera. The ghost starts pulling Connor away. And Bird takes a selfie. Mm-hmm. So he drops Connor and comes after her. And she runs into the basement, which this is another problem for me. Homeboy kills teenagers, has a kid tied up in this dark room, and they leave it exactly as it is in the high school. So the second she goes down in the basement, she's in the dark room. She turns on the red light, the dark room light, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I do wonder if maybe for a period of 15, 20 years, they kept it
closed off or
They
something.
didn't have a photography class or something. But at this point, the movie was filmed in 2017. I think the events were supposed to happen in 1977. So it had been a good...
But still.
Yeah.
Like, I just would move the dark room somewhere else.
Definitely.
Like, have the basement be something else. Leaving it exactly the same as it was when the guy was torturing a teenager, like, just seems cruel.
Yeah.
And weird. So that part bothered me a lot. But it worked for this.
Yeah.
The visuals were nice.
And the plot gets to come full circle. So
exactly. Nice. So, I mean, it worked, but it bothered me all at the same time. So... They're in the dark room. The shadow fully forms because it's in the dark room light. So it becomes like a fully formed being, if you will.
Yeah.
Kind of scary looking demon-y thing. And Bird snaps a picture.
Yep.
And the thing is kind of like freaking out.
Because
it
like, knows it's compromised now.
Yeah. And kind of like hits Bird on the ground. She's holding the picture and she crumbles it up. Mm-hmm. And... her hand is partially in the picture. So as she's crumbling up the picture, she's like breaking her own hand, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, awful, but cool because it was like she had to make this sacrifice to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So she crumbles it up. The demon kind of all crumbles over. She unfolds it and it stands back up. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, okay, what have I have to do something. So she sets it on fire. Because all of these teenagers, though they never smoke, have lighters in their pockets.
I think it's Devin's lighter. Or boyfriend's lighter from earlier.
I mean, could be, but why does she have it?
I think it got taken away when he got arrested.
Okay.
And then when he was in that little solitary confinement room, he told them, I think it's good my picture's up next because it'll give you time to work on this.
Okay, maybe.
So I think maybe she has it symbolically from him. It doesn't
matter. Anyway,
or
she
just
has a lighter.
Because, who didn't like having a Zippo lighter in high school?
Me? Diana always had one I never understood. Anyway.
Yeah. She didn't smoke cigarettes. She just liked fire.
Yeah. She's just a pyromaniac. So, anywho, so she lights the picture on fire. Demon bursts into flames, and so does her hand. Mm-hmm. And she just sits there screaming until the picture all burns up. The demon is gone. Her hand is burned, but okay.
Yeah. And I liked that they established earlier that if you didn't destroy the picture completely, it would grow back.
Yeah.
So she started the flame on the side away from her fingers, and so maybe wouldn't have had to burn her hand, except for the fact that she had to let it be destroyed 100%.
Yeah.
So she had to.
Well, and I'm glad we had this conversation because I was kind of like, just put it out and got to your fingers. But that makes perfect sense because I forgot about the whole growing back after the other fire thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And on the living people, the damage was already done, but I have to assume that his magic had to be snuffed out completely.
Right.
So.
Makes sense. So, yeah, he's burned. He's toast. She finds her friends.
Her friends are saying, we need to take you to the hospital. Your hand is burned. And she says, no, I have something I need to do first.
And then, listen, we have to talk about a movie called Jumanji. So, in the end of Jumanji,
The original one.
They toss the board game into the ocean. And it ends with it washing up on a beach, and you just hear, like, the drums of Jumanji.
Yeah.
So this movie ends with her throwing the camera into the ocean, and my brain immediately goes, are we going to hear the, like,
yeah,
like it's charging up, you know, like, because again, stay tuned for next time.
Yeah, Jill is always looking for the sneaky demon wink to the camera.
Yep.
The one that says, things aren't over.
Because, you know, there's 17 Halloween movies. So things don't end.
Yes. Yeah, so that is Polaroid.
Yeah.
And from a story perspective, there's a lot I really love about it. And I think that that's why I gave it such a high rating, was because I really enjoyed the fact that it managed to surprise me in a couple of places, especially in that third act, which, as we mentioned, is usually kind of
for me to be surprised at all, is a big deal.
Yeah.
But surprised in the third act of a horror movie is rare.
Yeah.
So I did really like that we hadn't figured out how to kill the demon. Mm-hmm. And there was definitely some things that you weren't expecting. Some things you were. Not gonna lie, I expected the whole throw the camera in the ocean thing. Just
totally
to be clear, it didn't
skinny.
have a Jumanji moment. I just wanted it to. But anyway, so there was definitely some predictable moments, but all in all, I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
I stand by my rating. I will still 100% watch this with Kelly when he's home.
Plus, I don't like movies that you can predict everything, and I don't like movies when you can't predict anything.
Yeah.
Because if they don't follow what they're supposed to follow, there are rules. Like if they, you know, like if they do something weird that doesn't work, then I get upset too. Or even if it does work, but, you know, it doesn't follow like the normal scary movie thing, it bothers me as well.
Yeah.
So this followed all the right things, but still managed to surprise me. And so it wasn't like, didn't leave me feeling uneasy. Mm-hmm. People would have been safe in the covers in their bed, which is a good thing. I need that, you know, so it had all those things.
Well, I think there are some movies that we watched last year where they would do things like introduce something and make it feel very important and never do anything with it.
Yeah.
And leave you wondering, why did you bother showing that to us? It's like that Chekhov's gun thing, that if you introduce a gun in the second act of a story, it has to go off in the third. Mm-hmm. And I think that this movie did a really good job of staying within its story. It followed its own rules.
Yep.
It harvested all the seeds that it planted. And it managed to surprise me. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah. All in all, I think my ratings were correct.
Yeah.
I haven't changed my mind about the scare factor.
Yeah, I think definitely a 2 on the scare factor.
And I definitely did still, after all of that, enjoy it a 4. So I think we're good.
And you'll still be a little afraid to drive home tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still recommend it for those who like scary movies that aren't too scary.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I could get Rachel to watch this one, and she doesn't like scary movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's in that category for me where it was more interested in being a fun ride than really terrifying people to their core. And for me, that's the sweet spot. I would much rather have a good time and only be mildly scared.
Exactly. I'm good with it. Yeah. I either want to be horrifically terrified or just have a good time.
Yeah.
There's no in between.
Yeah. Awesome. So, as per usual, if you enjoyed what you heard, it would do us a great favor if you would rate us on iTunes. It makes a big difference in how many people get told about the podcast and how many people get to discover our absurd and nonsensical ramblings. If you have any movies that you'd like us to watch, definitely reach out to us on social media at Scream Girl Squad or shoot us an email at screamgirlsquad@gmail.com.
Yep.
And we'll be back soon with more.
Soon.
This has been Scream Girl Squad.
Bye.